What's up guys, it's Xyz here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we're profiling the last of the decks from the new set, Amazing Defenders, and I saved the one that is most like one of the dearest decks to me for last. So today we're profiling Purrely. The reason I say that I really like the playstyle of this deck, it's because it feels very similar to Sky Striker, which is one of my favorite decks. This deck does have one main deck monster so far. In Photon Hypernova we're gonna get a second one, but for now we only have one main deck monster. You have a bunch of spells that allow you to facilitate that monster and also add extra effects to the mix, and you have a bunch of extra deck monsters in this particular archetype, Xyz Monsters, that you can play on top of this one monster that allow you to get more effects and push for games. So in terms of how the deck is supposed to be played, it feels very similar to Striker. Unfortunately, the power level, at least not yet, it's not something super great, but again, it does have the potential to become something really good because of how consistent the deck is. Basically, all of your spells can be act as E-Tellers for the monster you want to summon. The extra deck monsters are very easy to summon, and you do have some really good options. And of course, because the deck doesn't need a lot of stuff to function, you have a lot of space in the deck, play cards that allow you to fight the actual meta that you're playing in right now. So before we begin the video, if you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So let's start with the one main deck monster we have right now. We have 3 copies of Purrely. For now, this is the only main deck monster we're playing, aside from hand drops, of course. In Photon Hypernova, we're going to get a second one, so we're going to have even more support coming down the road very soon, but for now, it's the only one we have. So what this card does is that on summon, you can excavate the top 3 cards for a Purrely spell or trap card. You place the rest of the bottom of your deck, you add 1, and during your main phase, you can reveal a Purrely quick play spell in your hand to special summon an Xyz monster from your extra deck on top of this card that mentions the card you revealed, and you also put the revealed card on that monster as material. So this card, you have all the quick play spells in your deck, can basically get this card from your deck, so it doesn't matter that you only have a main deck monster at 3 copies, you basically play 12 copies because you play 9 quick play spells, so it's very consistent, and being very easy to summon means that all of these cards allow you to get another access to this card. So by playing 3 copies, what you can do is that with the first copy, you can make the Xyz play, and then if you can consistently summon the other 2 by having more quick plays, you can use them for rank 1 material, so you can summon something like an Assembly Robin to give you more interruption on board. So you can make sure that you can basically get as many copies of this card from your deck as possible as soon as possible, because you can make some really cool plays going first and going second. Now, I did mention that this deck does have a lot of free room, and you're going to see exactly what I mean when I get to the hand drop count. So let's start with Bestials, of course. We're playing 3 copies of Magnamut. Nothing to explain about this card, it's the best one. 3 copies of Druid's Worm, giving you some removal. 3 copies of Saronir. Since we don't have any level 6 monsters in our deck inherently, we need to play as many copies of these as possible so we can go into Wallow, because if you don't have any level 6 monsters in your own archetype, you need to draw 2 Bestials in order to be able to go into Wallow during your own turn, so we need to max out on Saronir as well, and it's another really good card. But we are not done with the hand traps. We also play 3 copies of DD Crow, another hand trap that can basically disrupt the graveyard. 3 copies of Skullmeister, same thing. And the cool thing about both DD Crow and Skullmeister is that these are not hard ones per turn, so that's why we're maxing them out, because drawing multiples of these do not really hinder you in any point, because with the amount of graveyard stuff that we play against right now, especially with the Xyz tier, you're going to be using all of these every single time. And 2 copies of Ghost Bell. The reason we're playing 2 copies of Ghost Bell is because she is a hard ones per turn, but unlike Bestials, because these are hard ones per turns as well, she's not as high impact as the Bestials, so we don't want to draw multiple copies of this card, so we're only playing 2. So that brings the total hand drop count to 17. So these cards are what allow you to make sure that your opponent is not going to be able to create an unbreakable board, and you need to do that because, similar to Sky Striker, you need to get to the game to a simplified game state, and that's where a deck like this thrives, because any one of your cards can act as a starter, and you can basically do so many plays with just one card because of how the Xyz monsters work. So you need to be able to get the game down to your own level to make sure that you outgrind your opponent and out-resource them. Now let's get to the core of the deck. We have a lot of spell cards in the deck, so let's start with the quick play spells. We have 3 copies of Purrely Pretty Memory. So all of these cards, their first effect is something unique to them, the second effect is something that they all share in common, and the third effect is an effect that they give to an Xyz monster when they are under material. So this card's unique effect is that each player gains 1,000 life points, and then you can discard a card to special summon level 1 Purrely from your deck, and basically that's the effect that it's been shared that all of the quick plays. And the effect is that a Purrely Xyz monster that has this card as material, once per turn you can send one other card you control to the grave to target a card your opponent controls and attach it to this card as material. So these cards are all E-Tellys for your monsters, so they are always live regardless of whether you want to use their effect or not. So the thing about these cards, you have to make sure that you can use the first effect in order to be able to use other effects. So this is why all of these cards can be really good. Their effects are very easy to trigger. It's not something situational that you need your opponent to have too many stuff on board in order to be able to use. No, this card, for example, just says each player gains 1,000 life points. You can use this whenever you want. So yeah, being able to have E-Tele effect and also a removal effect for your Xyz monsters is really amazing. We're playing 3 copies of Purrely Delicious Memory. This card says that you can choose a monster on the field until the end of this turn, cannot be destroyed by a battle, and then you can use the E-Tele effect, and Xyz monster that has this card as material gains 300 attack and defense for each material to it. This card is more specific because unless there is already a monster on the field, you cannot use its actual effect. So it's mainly a card that you want to be using more going second, but again, you need to max it out because you need to see these cards, as many copies of them as possible, to be able to get at least 3 monsters on the board to go to more rank 1 plays aside from your 1 Xyz play. We're playing 3 copies of Purrely Happy Memory. This card says that you can choose a card on the field, and the first time it was destroyed by card effect, it is not destroyed. The cool thing about this card is that you can basically set anything or play any card, and then you can choose it. So it's not like that it says that your opponent has to have a card on the field. You can choose maybe one of your set cards, so you can always use turn 1, and then it has the E-Tele effect, and then the effect that it gives the Xyz monster is that this card can attack monsters a number of times its battle phase up to the number of Happy Memory attached to it +1. So you can always attack multiple times with any monster by using your Purrely's effect to reveal this card in your hand to get your Xyz monster, put it as material, and then you can attack multiple times on monsters. So yeah, this card is another card. So we're playing 9 copies of the quick play spells and 3 monsters, which basically give us 12 copies of the monster, so it's very consistent to get access to it turn 1. Now let's get to some of the other spells that are not E-Tele. So we have 3 copies of Purrely My Friend. This is a continuous card that gives a lot of advantage for the deck. So first of all, you can pay 500 life points to reveal 3 Purrely cards from your deck, and then your opponent picks one of them randomly, you put that to your hand, and then the other are shuffled into the deck. So this card, as long as it gets to stick on the field, it's a +1 every single turn. And it also has another effect that if a face-up Purrely Xyz monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card, even during the damage step, so even if it's destroyed by battle, you can add up to 3 Purrely quick play spells from your graveyard to your hand. So if your opponent doesn't deal with this card quickly, the amount of advantage you're going to be getting is absolutely absurd. It's a +1 every single time, and also once your Purrely monsters gets destroyed, your Xyz monsters, you basically get to add back all of the materials that you used on them to basically do the same thing all over again. So this card is a card that you want to draw as quickly as possible, and then you want protect it, and basically you can do that because of the cards, the quick plays that allow you to protect your own cards by card effects, and they are quick plays, so you can use them during your opponent's turn as well. So yeah, this card is going to give you all the advantage you need. And we're playing 2 copies of the field spell, play 2 copies of Strary Purrely Street. This card, Street, is a card that your opponent cannot target Purrely monsters you control with card effects the turn they are special summons. So this card is not only going to protect your little guy by being able to protect from targeting, but also every time you Xyz summon, you get a new monster on the field, so your opponent is not going to be able to target them the first turn, so you basically do the entire chain uninteracted, so you can get all of your effects for free. And also this card has an effect that once per turn, if a face-up Purrely Xyz monster you control leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can special summon a Purrely monster from your deck or graveyard, so you can replace your monsters, and once per turn during the end phase, you can target a Purrely Xyz monster on the field and put one of your quick play spells from your deck or graveyard under it. So you give them extra materials to basically get more effects, and you also give them the corresponding effect of the card you put under them, because all the quick play spells give you extra effects when they are under an Xyz monster, so you get to choose which one you want to use every single time, so it buffs up your monsters even more. For some more generic spells, we play 2 copies of Pot of Desires. Everything is at 3 in the deck, so this card is free +1 in a deck like this, so why not play it? If it goes to 3, next ban list, we're definitely going to play 3 copies, but for now it's at 2, so we're going to play 2. And we play 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. This is another card that your opponent does have a lot of ways to interact with the deck. It's one of those decks that can potentially get hit by every single hand trap just because of how the deck functions. So the moment your opponent uses one or uses one of their effects when you're going second, you can use this card to get more pluses, look at their hand to take a card, or sometimes when you want to go for push, if you know you have a lot of damage, you can steal one of their monsters to use as well for that push. And the only trap card that we play in the deck is 1 copy of Purrely Leap. This card is a card that you can target a Purrely Xyz monster you control to special summon from the extra deck an Xyz monster with different rank, because there are rank 2 and there are rank 7 Purrely monsters, and then you attach the monsters to the previous monster to the new one as material, and then you return to the extra deck during the end phase, but you don't really care too much because you're going to be using these effects anyway as disruptions, and you can banish this card from the graveyard to target up to 3 Purrely monsters in your grave, you shuffle them into the deck, so you don't run out of monsters. Even though you're playing only 3 main deck monsters right now, you have so many ways to recycle them, so it's not like once you use all these 3 monsters, you're going to run out of gas, or if you banish like 1 or 2 copies with Desires, you cannot function, because even if you're left with only 1, you can still use this 1 copy over and over again to be able to go into your extra deck monsters. Now let's go to the Xyz monsters. First, let's start with rank 2 monsters. We play 2 copies of Purrely Beauty. So this card says that once per turn, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of this turn. If it has Pretty Memory as material, this becomes a quick effect. this is the theme of all the extra deck monsters. They have some effects that become an interaction only if they have the corresponding card as material, but they are going to have it because in order to special summon these cards, you need to be able to reveal the corresponding quick play from your hand with Purrely in order to make these Xyz monsters, because you're never going to hard summon these cards. They need level 2 monsters in order to be able to do that, so it's not happening. So this is why you need to be able to always have the corresponding quick play, so they're basically always quick effects. And they also have effects that you can use 3 times per turn. So this card, when you activate a Purrely quick play, you can attach that card on the field as material, then you can change the battle position of one monster your opponent controls. So 3 times effect that you can basically give them free materials to your monsters, change battle positions to make sure that your opponent's monsters are easier to deal with, and of course it has a negation impermanence effect that you can use as a quick effect. Next up, we have 2 copies of a Purrely Happiness. This is a card that at the end of the damage step, if it battle a monster, you can add a Purrely card from your deck to your hand, and if it has Happy Memory as material, you can have the attack of one face-up monster on the field, so it makes another monster easier to kill. And also 3 times per turn, when you activate a Purrely quick play spell, you can attach that card to the field, this card as material, and return one spell and trap card your opponent controls to the hand. So it can also be used as kind of a back row answer. The deck does have answers for pretty much anything. It's not like it's lacking any field. It's like sometimes it can be difficult to get what you need depending on the matchup, because maybe you don't have the exact quick play you want in your hand, but again, the deck does have enough search power to be able to get what it needs, most of it. We have 2 copies of Purrely Plump. This is a card that once per turn you can target up 2 spells and traps in the graveyard, you attach them to this card as material, and keep in mind that this card can attach cards from your opponent's graveyard as well, so against a matchup like Eldritch, you can basically make all the traps useless and not be able to float by putting them back under this card, and again, it becomes a quick effect if you have Delicious Memory to this card as material. And 3 times of turn, when you activate a Purrely quick play spell, you can attach that card to its material, and then you can banish a monster on the field until the end phase. So it's kind of like a Farfa, but again, you can do it 3 times a turn, so because you have quick plays, every time you activate one during your opponent's turn, you can basically banish their combo pieces. They're going to come back, yes, during the end phase, but if they're not using them for anything right away, you basically get a free turn to do whatever you want next. And for the rank 7 monsters, we have 2 copies of X Purrely Noir. This card is a card that you can Xyz summon by using a rank 2 monster with 5 or more materials as Xyz materials, so you need to get a lot of those quick play spells under one of your monsters in order to be able to use your rank 7 monsters, or you can use Purrely, that works as well. And this card's effect is that it's unaffected by activated effects of your opponent while it has 5 or more materials, and you can attach 2 materials from this card to target a card your opponent controls or in the graveyard, place him at the bottom of the deck, and it becomes a quick play, if a quick effect if it has a level 1 Purrely monster as material. So all of these conditions are very easy to meet, because in order to be able to summon this card, the monster already needs to have 5 or more materials, so it's going to be unaffected by your opponent's activated effects anyway, unless you summon it with Purrely, and the effect always is going to have the level 1 monster, so you always get this quick effect disruption effect. And the other one is 2 copies of X Purrely Happiness. This is the same thing. If it has 5 or more materials, rank 2 monster, you can slam it on top of it, and during your main phase, you can detach a material from this card, negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn, so it's kind of like a Dark Ruler No More, and it's very similar to Dark Ruler No More because your opponent cannot interact to this effect. They cannot chain anything if you have a level 1 Purrely as material, and when an attack is declared involving this card while it has 5 or more materials, you inflict 1500 damage to your opponent. So this deck even has ways to deal burn to win in time, because pretty much any modern deck right now has that for some reason, but alas, we're going to use it if we have it. So yeah, this card is another card that you can use to make sure your opponent's board is not going to interact with you, and then you can deal massive damage to them. Now, the rest of the extra deck are still Xyz monsters, and they are monsters we can use because of the level of the cards we have. So first, we have 1 copy of Assembled Nightingale. You know that in any type of level 1 deck that you can summon Xyz monsters, you're going to throw this card in, so you can attack your opponent directly. Then on main phase 2, go into your 1 copy of the Downer Magician, and then on top of Downer, you summon 1 copy of Sky Thunder Zeus, so you can use 4 materials of this card to clear your opponent's board and then do your plays freely. This is why we said that playing all those quick plays matters a lot, because sometimes when you're going second, you need to summon 2 of the Purrely in order to go for this play, and then summon the third one in order to do the rest. Or if you're going first, you can summon the Xyz monsters of the first Purrely, and then if you can summon the other 2, you can summon this 1 copy of Lyrlusk and Semblu Robin on top of it to basically get 2 more free bounces as disruption, which is really, really good. And the last monster is, of course, Wallow. We're playing Bestials, a lot of them. We're playing 9 of them, all of them. So why not play Wallow? If you can get 2 Bestials during your turn 0 when your opponent tries to play, and then you can slam this on top of your own turn, you get another interaction against Xyz, which is really, really good. So yep, that's the deck, guys. Purrely is a very, very unique deck that feels very similar to decks that do not see pretty much that much print. So if you're a fan of a deck like Sky Strikers, then I recommend trying a deck like this. It's not nearly as powerful, but because we are getting more support of the deck, and I hope that soon we're going to get a ban list that is going to tone down the format, maybe this deck can become a decent tier 2 strategy if all of these things are combined. But again, we're relying on Konami for this, so whoever knows if it happens. So so. But for still, it's a really, really fun deck. All of the decks from Amazing Defenders do have potential to become decent tier 2 decks. It just depends on how and when the format is going to. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.